Mozilla's like never sat on the sidelines on stuff. Like never. Going back 25 years, it's not our position to sit on the sidelines. Like especially if...
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Techlore Talks. Today, I am really excited to welcome back Mozilla, specifically Adam Fishman, who is their VP of Product, to discuss his role in the company, the philosophy behind their recent AI tools at Mozilla, especially within the Firefox browser, the decision-making process behind them, how they work, the opt-out process and why they chose to do it this way, and overall, how Mozilla approaches AI, as well as other features and what we can expect from them in the coming years and where their commitments lie for all of you to know about. It is no secret that AI is a polarizing technology, and when Mozilla started rolling things out in their browser, it's been a pretty polarizing thing. So I wanted to bring them on and ask them some questions that I had regarding it, so I hope that this interview can also answer some of yours. Let's get into it. Hello, everybody. I want to welcome Adam on the interview from Mozilla. If you don't mind sharing a little bit about what you do at Mozilla and a bit about yourself to get started.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me, Henry. I am Mozilla's VP of Product, which means that all of the product managers, the humans who are sort of responsible for figuring out what we should be building and where we should be taking the browser and features and functionality and stuff like that, like those are all part of my organization. We work with designers and engineers to build the browser.
Got it. And then why does this role exist? I guess asking, not to call into question your value to the company, but
yeah.
Can you just explain to me maybe a scenario in which like having this role is necessary and what would happen if it wasn't there? Just operationally.
For sure. Well, when companies are really small, you don't necessarily need this role. Like a lot of times in earlier stage startups, you have like the founder, the CEO is the head of the product organization. They basically say like, this is what we should build and why, and everyone goes and builds it. But as companies get bigger and you want to build and maintain more stuff, you have like a bigger and bigger surface area. And one of the roles of the product leader, myself, is basically to make sure that we're working on the most highly important stuff all the time. And so what happens is you have millions of ideas, and and the teams will bring those ideas through me or the sort of problems that they want to work on. And I help them sort of sift out like what's important to work on, what our users care about, what they don't. And so I kind of take like a huge like amount of stuff that we could go build and help us whittle it down to a smaller, more focused set of stuff so that we actually can build the right things. Sometimes I get it wrong. Sometimes the team gets it wrong. That's one of the hard things about building products. But yeah, I work a lot with the executive team at Mozilla, my peers in engineering leadership. We're also kind of, again, as an organization gets a lot bigger, like we are the people who help figure out the way that work needs to move forward now and in new and different ways. And so, yeah, how do we ship code, for example? How do we build products? Like, does that need to change? All that sort of stuff. That's kind of the role of like the leader of the product team. And the buck stops with me. I'm like the last and final decision maker on should we launch a thing? Should we not launch a thing? Is it ready yet? Is it not ready? So I'm the ultimate accountable person when stuff goes out the door.
Got it. So that's going to be relevant because I wanted to ask quite a bit about the AI stuff and see what the philosophy is there, but also some other features that have been dropped as well. And I wanted to see if maybe, because as us, we might see a blog decision, but it'd be cool to get a little bit more of the internal thinking about what's going on back there. Before then, I also wanted to just ask kind of what's your history before Mozilla and like what brought you to Mozilla in the first place?
I think what brought me to Mozilla is a lot of the same stuff that brings a lot of people to Mozilla. Like it is the last independent browser that exists. We're fighting the good fight. We have like incredible mission. I only work for companies that have a really great mission and a reason for existing. When you build products every day, it's really hard to do that work if you don't believe in like very strongly in what the company's doing. So that's why I came to Mozilla. And also the people are really incredible. I had an opportunity to lead the new product development organization a year or two ago. And so like all of the things that aren't the web browser that we work on. And there's a million different products. It's really fun. It's very like startup-y. We're super scrappy and move really fast. And there's just some of the best people on the planet working across all of Mozilla. So it's really fun. It's great. We have a tough audience. There's a lot of people that have really strong opinions on what we do, and they feel a lot of ownership, personal ownership in the browser. So that makes some days really hard, like if we mess up or something like that. But generally we try to get it right. Even when we mess up, it's usually not intentional, and we usually fix it pretty quickly. So that's why I came to Mozilla. Before Mozilla, I worked at a bunch of different interesting companies. I worked for a company called Imperfect Foods, which ships ugly fruits and vegetables to people.
I think I tried them once. Yeah.
Yeah. I worked for Lyft. I worked for Patreon, where you are a creator on the platform for a little bit longer.
Yeah.
And always in like building products, and always in mission driven and mission oriented companies like Imperfect Foods, Patreon, like even Lyft, all very mission driven businesses. And that's been super important for me for my whole career. It just makes it worth getting out of bed in the morning to go to work. So that's what I do.
Very nice. And then I think a really good starting point here actually isn't, I thought of it as you were talking, Pocket, right? Like Pocket, I think is maybe a good starting point to kind of discuss things that, maybe made some of the community upset. I mean, I was one of the people who was quite anti-Pocket. I never used it. One of the first things I did when I installed Firefox is disable Pocket. And I kind of would always humorously say, I don't know who's using this. But after you removed Pocket, they all showed up. They all spawned. So, but what was the behind the scenes look? I don't know if you were involved in Mozilla when Pocket was dropped. But if you have any context there, as just kind of a starting point of something that maybe people are a little more familiar with.
Yeah, I was involved in not necessarily the decision to sunset or close down Pocket, but I was definitely involved in the discussion around what is this thing? What are we doing with it? I think the reality is like Pocket was a company that we acquired a long time ago when news like aggregation and sort of like save it for later tools were pretty popular, growing like gangbusters. And it made a lot of sense for the web and how people were navigating the web. And then what we found was over time, like it required a lot of energy and effort to maintain, like a lot, an outsized amount of energy and effort for the amount of people that were using it. And at the end of the day, we were looking at the people working on it and what it was doing to advance the efforts of the browser and Mozilla's mission. And we just sort of came to this conclusion that like, could we take these people that are working on Pocket and have them work on other stuff that is more meaningful, that is more of what our users want? And even though there was a passionate audience of Pocket users, that passionate audience wasn't growing. And it was declining pretty steadily over time. And there were a bunch of alternatives to Pocket. And we just were like, should we be in this world anymore? As much as we love it, we were like, what if the smart people working on this could do a bunch of other really great things for the browser? And what would happen? And obviously we knew that would be a bummer for the people that use and depended on Pocket, but we tried to provide a smooth transition for folks to find other things that they could use. And there's other companies that we sort of endorsed and things like that. But yeah, at the end of the day, we were just like, gosh, we have so many more things that we want to do, and we are sinking a lot of time and energy into this particular product. And even though a number of people like it, we know we could build a lot better things for even more people if we put that time and attention elsewhere. And it's just one of those tough decisions that like winding down any product is a really hard decision, like especially if a lot of people are using it. It's one of the hardest things that a product manager or product leader has to do. So, you don't take it lightly, but we were able to like keep all the people that were working on Pocket and have them work on other great stuff. So like some of them are now basically building parts of the desktop version of Firefox or the mobile version or like on the content team. And so like all of that stuff, they've gone on to greater homes at Mozilla and at Firefox to have like bigger impact on other stuff that feels more relevant to today.
Yeah, very nice. Yeah, I know it's always challenging. And so I think just hearing like what happens behind the scenes is quite valuable. And I guess, so that's something that was removed in the past, but I feel like I also now would like to see kind of the internal processing of something that was added, especially AI, very polarizing topic.
For sure.
You guys really stuck your necks out. As you said, the community is quite precise on what they want, and I feel
Yeah.
like you did the one thing that polarizes any community that already is polarized on this topic.
Yeah.
Um, so I want to start with just your philosophy, not I guess maybe you personally, but also just as Mozilla. Like, what is your guys' philosophy on AI? I feel like now in 2026, things are settling a bit down. I feel like up until even early 2025, there was still these everyone just had these bright rose-colored glasses on. This is going to fix everything. The hype
Right.
was just very high. And I
Yeah.
feel like the hype has died down quite a lot, but these companies haven't gone anywhere. AI hasn't gone anywhere. So, what is your philosophy on AI, just to kind of open up this discussion?
So I have my personal philosophy, which is fairly well aligned with Mozilla's philosophy. So I'll kind of speak about both of these things at the same time. I think, and especially for our audience who thinks about this a lot, I think a lot of people have every right to be skeptical of AI that's kind of like gimmicky and forced. And there is a whole world of products being created where people are just like, well, if we just sprinkle some AI on it, that'll work. And a lot of that is coming from like outside pressure, boardrooms, investors, public markets, like things like that. And so like I don't and Mozilla doesn't subscribe to that theory of AI. Like it's a technology. It's interesting. It can do some really interesting things. I think, regardless of how you feel about AI, I think one thing that's pretty clear is we're sort of moving towards this new era of how people and computers interact with each other. And AI is going to have a really big impact on shaping access and the use of the internet and information. And that has always been Mozilla's focus. And so, we could put our head in the sand and sit on the sidelines and be like, nah, we're not going to pay any attention to us. And then the problem is Google and Microsoft and OpenAI, they're going to make all those decisions. And that's not good. Mozilla's like never sat on the sidelines on stuff. Like never. Going back 25 years, it's not our position to sit on the sidelines. Like especially if big things are shaping the future of how people use the web. And so like our philosophy is we're going to play the role here that we've played for 25 years, which is we're going to be the stewards of the right way to do things. And we're going to be in the conversation and we're going to work on products so that we can have a say in how AI works, evolves, is actually useful to people, is trustworthy, and puts the users of the browser or the users of the AI in control and doesn't like thrust it upon them. Some people are not going to be happy by that stance. They're going to be like, you shouldn't even touch this with a 10-foot pole. And I just think we feel differently about it. There is a middle ground here where you can have the values and the views that Mozilla has and believe that it's important for us to be involved in this, or else somebody else is going to write all the rules and people are going to be way worse off as a result. So we choose to participate instead of sitting it out.
Yeah, I think this is as a outsider looking in, it calls into question the nuance of what you all are. Because if I see you all as just a browser, just Firefox, it is quite hard to justify the AI position in some ways. I think just on its face. But when I hear what you say, I hear Mozilla sees itself as no matter what the feature they release, it doesn't have to be AI. It could be some made up thing, like we can make something up. Let's say machine learning, which is,
Right.
maybe that was like the phrasing of similar feature sets of AI. Maybe it's, I don't know, googly bears, like some new technology that doesn't exist. And these big tech companies are starting to implement it independent of the Firefox browser. Mozilla would try to still be at that table and do what it takes to be at the table to still
Yeah.
try to represent the values of that community. Do you think that's
Yeah.
a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think so. Because there's Mozilla, the foundation, right? Which is all the advocacy work and all the pushing that we do with governments and regulators and all of that sort of thing to advocate for people, right? For choice, for like anti-monopoly behavior and things like that. Like that is the world that we're going to operate in regardless of the Firefox browser. It's just like how we see the world. And so, yeah, I think you're right on that front.
So do you see this AI? Because people are seeing the AI as a Firefox feature.
Mm-hmm.
So how much of the AI rollouts do you feel like is a feature, like that's designed to help users and be like, let's say you didn't have any advocacy, you weren't going to be showing up at any table with big tech companies, you were just
Yeah.
managing a browser.
Yeah.
So how much of this AI do you see as genuinely useful for people and like fits into their workflow versus more of that advocacy role? Like
Yeah.
this is something that we need to figure out what this looks like what does AI look like when it's actually done in a proper way? And you're kind of building the infrastructure for better companies, organizations, individuals to have a better avenue. Like they don't have to go through some Chrome API that only works with
Right.
their API, like, you know.
Yeah. Well, the answer is kind of both. We kind of do both at the same time, right? And it's hard because it means you're doing a lot. But I'd say a couple of things about that. One is, we talk to people. You probably have seen our Reddit presence. You probably have seen
I
people.
blocked Reddit on my DNS, so no.
Okay, never mind.
I did it for. I can't take Reddit
for your
anymore.
own, yeah. Well, I was going to say maybe for your own mental health reasons. Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off.
No, it's totally fine. But like, there's an active and vibrant Mozilla community in a lot of places, right? Social media, Reddit, like our own Connect, like we get inbound all the time from folks. And, we asked a lot of people at all ends of the spectrum of like comfort with AI. Like, did they want to, were they curious about it? Did they like, what did they want to see in the browser? And the majority of people said like, I'm curious about this. I'm curious what Mozilla's take is on how it can make the browser better or our experience better. And so like, yeah, I want you to do stuff here. And so we said, okay, that gives us some good license to experiment. Like, let's learn how this can be helpful. Let's learn what the Mozilla approach to AI is. And if we don't do that, we're actually ignoring a huge, like the majority part of the users of the browser. So like that was like one very strong signal. In terms of like what is useful with AI, I think a lot of people think about AI and they're like, they think of just the generative AI that I know today, the like slop that's filling the internet with stuff, the fake images and like all that hallucinations and like all of that sort of stuff. But there's a lot more to it that I think people don't realize is like, oh, actually that's AI as a technology under the hood doing stuff. Accessibility is an example. And you probably know this, Mozilla is a company that cares a great deal about accessibility because the more people who can access the internet and content and the more it's sort of democratized, the better, right? More people online, better. As you navigate the web, there are an infinite number of images, for example, that don't have any alt text associated with them. So we have an on-device AI model in Firefox. So it's on your device. So that means it's not like hitting a cloud server. It's not sending data anywhere else. It's literally doing this on your device. That as it comes across one of those images, the browser's rendering the page. It will check for alt text. It will analyze that image, and it will actually output a description of the image as alt text. So if you're like a very anti-AI person and you're like, no AI anywhere, what if you were also blind and you needed that information because most people don't add their own alt text to images on the web? Like that is a genuinely useful feature to a large swath of the population. I think we estimate that something like 1 in 5 or 1 in 4 people who use the web has some sort of disability. Now, they're not all blind, of course, but like imagine the population that is. That is a really useful feature. And there's no way that we can do that at scale. Like no human can really do that at scale. And so like that's a very specific, narrow, like feel good example. But the other side of this is we have this new product that's coming out. It probably around the time that this show is going to release, we have this product that's coming out in beta called Smart Window. And we've talked about this a lot. Basically, first, you can choose to use it or not. So one of our philosophies about AI, we could talk about AI controls too, if you want to talk about that in a sec. But like, you can turn it all off if you want. And that is, again, a feature that I have not seen any other browser do, is the ability to have a toggle that says like, get all this stuff out of my face, delete all the models that are locally on my machine, like gone. I don't want to be aware of it. I don't want to be exposed to it. I don't even want to see a marketing message that says you should use it. Like You can turn it all off. And then you can like selectively reactivate stuff if you want. That's fine. But anyway, so Smart Window, it basically is another browsing experience. Again, you have to go into it yourself. We're not like saying you must use this. It's almost like an incognito window or a private window. You know, we have private window, we have a regular window, classic window, and then we'll have a smart window. So you can go into this and you can say, hey, because I'm going into this, you can say, I'm interested in AI, right? And it will, as you're navigating the web, develop a memory of your behaviors on the web. Again, locally stored, like on your device. So it knows like some things you're interested in. It knows that you are a vegetarian. It knows based on things that you're doing. You can also see and remove specific memories. So you know everything that it knows about you. And you can say like, I don't like that. Get rid of it. I don't want you to know that. Take that out. Use an example of like how this is genuinely useful to somebody. During our piloting of this, we have somebody at Mozilla who is building this product. And this person is really into heavy metal. Okay. Not my particular genre of music, but no hate for anyone that loves heavy metal. They also play guitar. And so they were looking at two different guitars and they were doing like comparison shopping. And they were like, which one of these should I get? So the smart window, there's an assistant that kind of follows you around. And it basically said like, you should think about this guitar between these two because it is better for heavy metal. And it was like, whoa, why is it better for heavy metal? It's like, well, it doesn't say that in the description of the guitar, but it knows that the guitar has a longer string, which you can use for tuning a guitar lower and making it heavier and like making it sound heavier and stuff like that. And so like, this is an example where, okay, it knows this is a like subtle thing about you that you like heavy metal. And now you're doing something on the internet, you're shopping for a guitar, you're browsing, and it's making a helpful recommendation for somebody. So that's like not the accessibility example, but it's an example of just like how it's useful. Would the person been able to figure this out eventually on their own? Probably, but would have required a lot more research, like would have required like knowing specifically about the string length and like stuff like that. And just the AI can help you with that sort of stuff. And again, it's really only for people who absolutely want to use it because they don't have to otherwise. So, but both of those things seem pretty like genuinely useful to me as someone who like buys things online, as someone who knows a lot of people who have disabilities that are trying to use the web and things like that. And those are two very different use cases of AI. You can actually turn both of those off if you want, but we found that a lot of people would turn off, even if they were turning off the AI controls, they would then selectively turn back on something. They were like, oh, actually, this is really useful to me, but I'm going to leave this on. And so I found that really interesting in talking to people about how they use the features too.
Very nice. Yeah. And I guess a quick comment. It's interesting because I feel like maybe until offline AI models, and maybe this is something I need to evolve my own views on because I hold this view that personalization is a bad word, actually, because the way personalization has been done until now has been cloud, collecting lots of data, and then inferring your preferences based on that from big tech companies. Yep. And so anytime a service says personalization, it's typically for me a big red flag.
Yeah.
That's still the case, like 90% of the times. But I think this offline AI world is now enabling offline tools to be able to do this personalization without needing the cloud, which it could have been possible before, but we're seeing it a lot more often now where it's like, oh, we now have an offline way of analyzing things, et cetera.
Yeah.
Just a comment, I guess. I wanted to just get a tiny bit technical here.
Sure.
I don't know if you guys have a very, you talk about this idea of showing up at the table and making sure that you're representing, a better way of doing things. Can you point to like a specific thing that you've seen other big tech companies propose that concerns you, that you think people should know about, that you at Mozilla are actively doing differently, and how that could play into things? I feel like
Oh
we see
man.
this in like the web engine space a lot, where Google wants to do something with Chromium, and then you guys are like, no, we need to do it this way. So I don't know
Yeah.
if you have something like that.
I don't know that I have a specific example related to like the browser engine or something like super highly technical like that. I mean, I know that we are doing that stuff all the time.
In the AI side of things,
Yo,
particularly.
in the AI side of things, we haven't yet seen a ton of legislation around AI usage, but we're involved in all of those conversations right now. I would say where we differ from big tech in terms of like big tech does it one way and we do it a different way are in a couple dimensions. One is we've been talking about this idea of choice, and choice comes in a lot of shapes and sizes. So like take the Chrome browser for example. They have an AI in Chrome. That AI is Google's AI. They own that AI. They want that AI to have as much information about you as possible for the reasons that you said. It makes better ad targeting, like at the end of the day. We do not own an LLM. We're not training them. We're not in the business of doing that. That is one, reserved for people with way deeper pockets than us. and two, like, you don't need it. There's like a million awesome open source AI models now. So we are giving people options and choice on like which AI model would you like to use in Smart Window. And we're telling you like, well, this one's faster and this one's better at this and this one's better at this. And then the other thing is we're also allowing people to bring their own model, which is a slightly more technical like feature. Eventually, we're going to make it like super easy for anyone to do it. But right now, you can actually go into the Smart Window when it's live, and you can say, using the like open router AI protocol, you can say, I want this model that lives here, and you can even have it be a local one, and point it at that, and it just works.
So you guys use right now, it's only Open Router through like an API key. Do you use like Olama or anything?
Yes, I think we're looking at a lot of different ways that we can work, like different partners that we can work with here.
Cool.
But Open Router is like the sort of the most common protocols are the ones that we're trying to use in the beginning because it makes it most widely accessible to people. But like that's an example. Like nobody else is going to do that. Like ChatGPT's browser is not going to use any other model. It's going to use ChatGPT. Like, come on. I should say OpenAI's browser. Microsoft, same deal. Like, we are trying to give people that choice. And then the other thing is like the idea of turning it off. Like, nobody else is really letting people turn it off. Certainly none of the big companies. And like, we know that there's a world where if you turn off AI in the browser, like, it might actually make your browser experience not as great as somebody who's enhancing it with AI stuff like translation and sort of all of those things. But like, that's okay. That's people's choice. And so I think this idea of like choice and agency and then also transparency, like who else is showing people like what memories the model has about them? Like, is Google going to tell you all the data that it has about you? Like, probably not. That's a scary proposition, you know? And we show everybody that in like full transparency. We're like, pull the curtain back. Here's everything it knows about you. And delete the stuff that you don't want it to know about you, or turn it off entirely so you don't want it to collect any information. That's fine.
It's quite similar. Actually, I think Claude might be the only one that seems to do that because Claude has memory. And also Claude doesn't have a browser. They just have their extension, which I think only works in Chrome so far.
Only works in Chrome.
But it would be cool, I think.
You know, we seem to be a bit more values aligned with the team at Anthropic. We've actually done some cool partnership stuff with
I saw the
lately,
security vulnerabilities thing. That
oh man, that was amazing. Yeah. That's actually, I would love to tell that story a little bit, but we can do that later if you want. That's fine.
I mean, we're here. You can quick. I have my list of things to touch on. And
okay, cool. So basically, you mentioned security vulnerabilities. So basically what happened was the folks at Anthropic who build Claude, the various Claude models, they have a red teaming security team. And they were building and training models to find security vulnerabilities in products, which seems like could be a good thing, could be a terrifying thing. We had previously tried this with AI. We like a year ago. We were like, we're curious. Is this work? And it didn't work. Like the models were not very good at the time for this sort of stuff. And then some new models came out. And what happened was the Anthropic team started testing a bunch of the JavaScript engine in Firefox. And the reason that they did it is they're like, well, this one's going to be a tough nut to crack because it's open source. So like the community has been pounding on this for years. Like it's got to be super hardened. Anyways, Opus found like 22 security vulnerabilities in a span of 2 weeks, which is like 30-40% of all of the vulnerabilities that we found the entire previous year, which is amazing. And so they started like submitting patches, like submitting PRs to the code base. And we saw that and we were like, whoa, what is going on here? So we like reached out to that team, and we've actually been working with them ever since. We fixed all this stuff like right away. And then we've been working really closely with them because like it sort of like crossed this chasm where we were like, wow, actually AI can do this stuff now. Like this is really powerful. Imagine how much stuff we could find and fix in the Firefox browser that are like serious security issues. And so we've gotten pretty close with that team over there, which is nice. They've let us like take some things for a spin and, you know, try new things. And obviously like they love working with us because we fix stuff really fast and we have some of the best security engineers on the planet. And so anyway, so that's been really fun. It's been like a fun thing to do with that team, but impressive like use case for a browser that we were like, sure, you would never find anything in.
Yeah.
So,
Given it doesn't, I haven't heard, maybe they are planning something internally on like their own browser, but I think the fact they went for an extension, I think speaks to them maybe wanting something more open, which would be very nice. I feel like I don't get the vibe so far that they're going for just a locked in ecosystem for everything.
I don't think so.
So I don't know if you guys are open to anything, like if like there was a Firefox extension that they might be working on, or anything to expect in the future.
Yeah, we've talked about that with them. We've talked about just sort of building our own that looks like theirs. I don't think we're quite there yet. Like we're kind of focused on doing some other stuff with them, like a lot of the security stuff, which has been really helpful for us. So maybe eventually, I think. But yeah, I mean, we're very friendly with that team, which has been fun. So, and like I said, seem to be pretty values aligned with us, which is good.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Now back to on topic.
Back to our regularly scheduled programming.
Yeah. So you mentioned the AI controls, and I wanted to kind of get into this next. Okay, my understanding of events, this could be wrong. I keep up with too many articles back here. It's like hundreds a week. You guys released the AI features. Naturally, it was a polarized kind of assessment. People haven't even seen it yet. They haven't tried it yet, but it's still, a lot of people are anti-AI, period. Mm-hmm. And then we saw the Firefox AI controls come out as kind of a separate announcement after the kind of a little bit of the backlash. So do you mind maybe walking through what that looks like, what the AI controls do, what they don't do?
Yeah. So first of all, like we always knew we were going to build ways of turning stuff on and off. That's like just a thing that we had as part of our plan. What you saw was like us sort of testing some things with AI and then figuring out like, okay, what does this look like to turn it on and off? Now we have a meaningful number of features, so it makes sense to have that feature now. So it's sort of like part of a sequential roadmap. And since we can't release like everything all at once, we have to like build and ship and build and ship and build and ship. So that's like generally the backstory. Now, how they work, on the surface, they're really, really simple. But underneath the hood, they're actually quite complex. And there was like a lot of discussion and debate and like figuring out how's this going to work and like what states are we going to have and all this sort of stuff. So what it is on like the surface is it's a new area in Firefox settings. So you go into the browser settings and there's a big thing that says AI controls. And you go into it and it lets you make decisions on whether AI is globally on or off, or whether you want it off, but you want certain AI enhanced features to be available. So like an example might be translation. So a lot of people like translation. And we actually were originally just going to build the thing as a blanket on-off toggle. It's either on or it's off. Simple. And then we talked to a bunch of users about it and they were like, wait a minute. Like, I don't like AI, but I do like translations that are done with ML. And we were like, but that's kind of part of the AI umbrella. So like, what should we do? And they were like, well, could we turn most things off and some things back on? And we were like, sure, that seems reasonable. Like, so we're like, give the people what they want. So you can, if you're a no AI person, you can flip the switch, blanket, turns everything off. And like I mentioned earlier, it turns off like any mention of it. So like, we're not gonna show you a thing that's like, you should try Smart Window when that comes out. Like, not happening, gone, stricken from the record, doesn't even exist, like in the memory hole. And so you can do that if you block it all. But if you still want to leverage some aspect like translation, or you're like, I want to turn off everything else, but I want to test out the Smart Window thing, like you can leave that on. When you block everything or you block an individual thing, we delete the models from your device. So like that was another step where we like, should we do that? And we're like, look, if people don't want AI, they don't want it. So get rid of it. So
How much space are all of them together?
Not a ton. I don't know like how much they all are together, but like not a ton. These are small. These are like small on-device models.
Cool.
And for performance reasons, like we wouldn't ship the browser with like a huge amount of, on-device stuff. But it's also just more the principle of the thing. Like if I said I don't want it, I don't want it. Like I don't want it anywhere on my system. So get it off. So we do that. Like they're really gone. Like I said, we don't suggest them. We delete the models, like gonzo. And then as new features come online that take advantage of AI, and by the way, like we're not just shipping AI features every day. Like we're shipping a lot of things. Sometimes things are benefited by that technology. But as they come online and they have AI, like powering them or participating in or leveraging that technology, they'll go into the AI settings or the AI controls. And so that will grow over time, and we'll probably have to like reorganize it and stuff like that, but it's still going to work the same. Turn it off or leave it on or turn off certain things or like whatever. Yeah, that's kind of it. That's pretty much how it works. But as you can imagine, under the hood, like making sure all these things happen, like, okay, I turned it off. The models are gone. Like what happens if somebody turns it off and turns it on really quick? Like what do we do? We're like, well, the models are gone. Sorry. And by the way, just so folks know, like models don't download to the machine until somebody actually goes and engages with an AI feature in the first place. So it's not like we like load up a bunch of things in the browser package. Like they are downloaded at the moment when you're like, I would like to use this now. And so, and then we're like, okay, this is somebody who wants a thing. So here is the thing. And it happens like behind the scenes and stuff like that. But then they're equally just deleted behind the scenes when you turn it off. So yeah, so that's how it works.
Yeah. Very nice. I have a few more technical questions about
Sure.
this before I go into, I guess, what I've naturally grouped up here as we're talking as the case for AI skeptics.
Yeah.
But before I get there, which of these AI features, or are all of them also going to be on mobile? Is this desktop only? Is it mobile?
We sort of selectively decide if things should be at parity based on the use case of the feature. So like, as an example, on iOS, we have this shake to summarize feature. And people are kind of into it. We obviously can't have a shake to summarize feature on the desktop unless people are violently shaking their computer or something like that. So like that's not a two-way street. But controls is a two-way street. So like AI controls is coming to all the mobile experiences. A lot of people when we rolled it out were like, well, why isn't it there already? And we were like, well, we got to work out some of the kinks. And the easiest way to do that actually is to do it in one platform and then learn, especially the platform that has the most users, like learn and then roll it out to the other platforms, because it makes the time it takes for us to go from we'd like to release this to actually releasing it much, much, much shorter. So that's an example where like something will be everywhere. And then there's other features and functionality that just like, maybe they make sense on mobile, maybe they don't. If we do some sort of like voice thing, maybe that makes sense on a mobile device where it's hard to type. Maybe it makes sense in the desktop browser, but like to be determined, I think. So we don't have like a hard and fast rule for must it be on both platforms. We kind of look at like, does it make sense? One thing that I can tell you makes a ton of sense on mobile is tab grouping and organization, because that is painful on a mobile device. Like no matter the platform, Mozilla aside, Firefox aside, like that's hard to manage a bunch of tabs. So if there's a way that AI can give you intelligent groupings and recommendations, that might be inherently really useful for people. And again, they don't have to do it; they can turn it off. But that's a thing that we're like thinking about. How do we bring that to a mobile experience? So yeah, so hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, and then I also was wondering. I feel like a lot of people are anti-AI for privacy reasons.
Yeah.
So are all of these models offline? Do any of them have internet connected connectivity? Are they disclosed when they are?
Most of the models download locally to your device. For something like Smart Window, where maybe you're choosing between a variety of different models, those have to be hosted somewhere. Some of them can be accessed locally, but some of them have to be hosted somewhere. And in that case, we're really clear about what you're sort of opting in to do. You're opting in for some things to be sent to like provisioned like instance that we control that is secured for doing inference and things like that. But the main thing is we don't retain any of that stuff. So like if stuff does leave your device and we're transparent about like it has to leave the device here, we're not holding on to that information. One, sort of violates our principles for stuff. And two, like, we're not, it doesn't really benefit us in any way. Like, why would we want to hold that? That's not what users want. Like, why would we do something that our users objectively don't want? And so, even if it's like a memory or a query that has to go somewhere to return an answer, like it's deleted after that session. It never stays. It never leaves that, and it's sent in very secure ways. So it's why we do things like OHTTP and stuff like that in other parts of the browser too. Like we often go to really great technical lengths to ensure that we're doing the right thing by our users and our manifesto, even if it's not the fastest engineering route. And so often a lot of people are like, why can't you just get this other feature out the door as quickly as possible? And we're like, well, it's complicated to do it the Mozilla way. And so, it takes longer. But yeah, so some things will have to leave, but again, leave device temporarily. But again, we're really transparent about that you're entering an experience where that could happen. And again, you don't have to go into that experience at all. So yeah, the remaining things are all on device. So yeah.
Nice. And then my last technical question before we open up the skeptics section.
Sure.
Firefox forks. What part of this are all of these models and the AI features part of the same code base that potentially if someone was just forking the Firefox code and changing a few things, are they going to have all these AI features by default kind of baked in, or how does this impact downstream forks of Firefox?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I actually am not 100% sure of the answer to that. Okay. I would imagine things that have to hit the server access points and stuff that we control, probably like that's not gonna happen in forks. But I think the ability to like pull down a model, like all that features and functionality should be there, and running things locally should be there. But again, one of the beautiful things about our browser is you can kind of customize it to work however you want. Like I, for example, have a locally running version of Firefox on my machine that I test out building new things in all the time. It's like a fun side project that I have. And it's pretty cool. And I mean, I don't use that as my daily driver browser. I use like the regular version of Firefox or Nightly or something, but I have Adam's version of Nightly on my machine.
I was literally going to say, Adam, we need to see Adam's version as a GitHub repo.
I had to label it because I was like, it looks so much like the other version of Nightly. I'm like, how do I know which one I'm using? And so it literally in the dropdown, it says Adam's Firefox Nightly. But I've like extended split view and like all kinds of things to just try. I'm like, what's possible? Could I do this? And it's been really fun to do it. So yeah.
So yeah, I wanted to just dedicate a section maybe to skeptics, mainly because I feel like maybe even a year ago, I would have been in this would have been my demographic. I've become a little more open to the idea of AI, especially now that I'm seeing the tools be a lot more useful.
Yeah.
For me personally, and also the use cases for the more private alternatives are starting to already get better.
Mm-hmm.
There's this relationship I see in privacy respecting technologies, which is big tech just does something. They don't care about the implications and the downstream effects, but they release this really cool thing that creates a lot of FOMO. And then it takes some time. And then finally, people find a way to do it on device, or they find a way to do
Yeah.
it online with end-to-end encryption or zero knowledge, whatever. I feel like the AI gap has been not closed, but
Yeah.
we're already starting to see what it looks like. So if someone is skeptical of AI, they're listening to this podcast, maybe they're in like, I'm always going to say no to AI camp.
Yeah.
I had kind of two core questions to ask you for those people. The first
Yeah.
one is, what is like an honest discussion on AI and what it can and can't do
Yeah.
based on you/Mozilla's philosophy? And do you see AI needing to be in their lives? Or is this something that, I know it's kind of a difficult question to answer, but I would start there, and then I have a second question.
Yeah. So, like, honest discussion on AI, what it can and can't do. What you just said, which was, a year ago you were a skeptic and now you're starting to warm up because you see how it's becoming more useful. I tend to agree with that. Like my Anthropic example of like a year ago, we tried a thing, or 6, 8, 9 months ago, we tried a thing and it failed miserably. And then December, January, guess what? It works really well now. And like, that pace is fast, how good some of these things are getting. So like the first thing I would say to skeptics is like, you don't have to love AI. Like it's actually good to be skeptical of it. I teach this to my kids. Like be skeptical of the output. Like independent thought is not gone in society, and it shouldn't be, at least like in my family. I'm like, that's really important. Our ability to think critically about stuff and to interrogate things that we get back from AI is really, really important. Like by the time that this show goes out, what AI can and can't do will probably have changed again, right? Like I don't even know what the release schedule is, but the pace of which things are improving is wild. So I would say like things that AI can do today pretty well. Obviously, those coding use cases that I gave examples of are like, it's pretty impressive. Still requires human review, but it gets people a lot farther along, a lot faster. It's allowing a lot of companies to build products faster for people. That's good, genuinely good, as long as they're building the right stuff, I think aside from that specific case, like AI can take information and make it easier and more accessible to people and help them learn and grow over time. Like it is generally a good teaching tool to ask it questions, get feedback, ask that feedback questions, like continue to go and turn those conversations. It's interesting. Democratizing like learning, like sometimes the AI stuff that I generate for my daughter's math test is just as helpful as the tutor that we pay for. And in fact, those two things working together are actually way more beneficial. So like, I think eventually it's going to help people get a lot of things done that are kind of drudgery tasks, repetitive, formulaic. It's going to save people time and they're going to not have to do the stuff that they don't like to do anymore. Today, you have to have like a corpus of really high quality information and context to do that. And it still fails when there isn't enough context or high quality information, or it doesn't know something. It's not great at recognizing, oh, I don't actually know that, so I should tell Adam that or Henry that. Instead, it wants to please. So it's going to try to give you an answer, and that answer's wrong, and like completely manufactured. That's happening less and less because I think sometimes some people are getting better at giving it more context. It's also gobbling up more information and stuff like that. But like broadly speaking, it still makes those kinds of mistakes. And so like, we've spent a lot of time with our work on things like Smart Window that like if it objectively can't answer a question, it's going to let you know that it needs to search for the information like elsewhere, or it's going to be like, I don't have the answer to that question. Sorry. I think, let me tell you one more thing that it can't do, because I told you some of the things that I think it can do really well, like coding, information synthesis, and stuff like that. And you mentioned big tech kind of just like flinging things out of the ether and letting everybody else catch up. Let's talk about agentic workflows. These are things that AI cannot do super well right now, like complex agentic workflows. And by agentic, I mean it acting on your behalf to make a bunch of decisions, click on a bunch of things, like do a bunch of stuff. Like we at Firefox know that if we're going to do anything in that area, it has to be safe and secure and it can't just go off into the ether and like do a bunch of things on your behalf that you didn't intend it to do. And so we are treading really lightly in that space. Like Smart Window at its launch is not going to have any of that stuff in it. Like if we do that at some point, it will be very specific use cases that are like heavily tested and pressure tested, because like the more complicated a workflow is, the more opportunities an agent has to get it wrong. It's like that game of telephone that we all used to play in school. Like I like whisper in your ear and you whisper in somebody else's ear, and 10 steps down the road, it's not even the same like sentence that we started with. Like that's agentic workflows right now. And so we don't like, it's irresponsible for us to like purport that that works well for users. And so like you're not like, that's a thing that, you know, some companies are saying like, oh, it works great, it's awesome, yeah, use it, use all the things. And we're like, we're not so sure. So like that's not going to find its way into the browser anytime soon. So like stuff like that, like I think it, again, I'll come all the way back to the beginning. Like it's good to be skeptical of this stuff. I actually encourage it. I love talking to AI skeptics. Like, and I like talking to AI true believers too. I had a friend from OpenAI at my house one time, and I was just grilling him. I was like, are we in a bubble? What's going on here? How is this useful? Tell me how, like all these things. And like, it was a good conversation. And I think you should do that sort of stuff. Like it only makes people better. It makes this stuff better and gets the outcome that we want. So anyway, that's a long answer to your question, but that's how I think about it for skeptics and what it can and can't do.
Yeah, and I want to be mindful of time. I only have a couple more, but as you were talking, and you don't have to go super deep into it either, but I was kind of thinking like, what are the friction points I've seen from different people who don't want to use AI? And I think one of them is they just don't see the use case, which is kind of what you touched on. But another thing that came up is ethics. I've seen a lot of people concerned about how data is trained, how most of the companies involved in this space are all in some way, for the most part, unethical companies based on these people's views, including mine sometimes. The privacy implications, the IP implications, the environmental implications potentially as well. I know that seems to be changing every day if AI actually uses a ton of water or not, depending on who you ask.
Right.
So you know, data centers, people are very against data centers being built. People's energy prices are going up because of AI. Like these are the things that also I think make people go, I don't want to use this technology. I don't want to support this industry in any capacity. Is this maybe more so where we go back to what you said about showing up and showing an alternative way of doing things? Is that how you would see this personally? Or
yeah, I think Mozilla will always do as much as we can across a lot of those dimensions. So like if you take like ethical training, like we have the Common Voice project, which is an open source way that people can actually donate their voice to do language transcription, like voice transcription. And you come into it and you know what you're doing and you're like helping translate things and you're speaking things back. And it's like, I'm donating my voice and my time to this effort. And it's like an open repository of training data that everyone is like, we're all in this together. You can use this. And yeah, we're like pretty, when I think about like policy and regulation and stuff like that, like, again, I mentioned that it's pretty early still on a lot of these areas, but Mozilla's been like elbow to elbow with the big tech companies when it comes to other types of regulation, like anti-competitive stuff and choice screens in Europe and like the Digital Markets Act and things like that. Like AI is not going to be any different. We're in all those conversations. We like go to the symposium in India where they're like having conversations about this. Like we're in the mix and we show up pretty big when we show up at these things. And so like we're trying to the best of our abilities. I think there are some things that like we have to be realistic about, like, can Mozilla itself solve that problem? And I think there are some things that are like systemic ecosystem challenges that we can certainly advocate and be a voice. but like it's going to take a lot more than just us to push that forward. And so we try to like change the standards so that then everyone else has to do the same thing. And that's like the best thing that we can do is we can change the system so that you can't work around the system, you know, and that there are rules and there is like an expectation of what you do here and what energy usage and things like that. And so I don't think we can fix everything, but we're sure as hell trying. So yeah.
And then going back to my actual second question, which was, you know, the first one is, what if people just don't see the use case, et cetera? I think the other concern is there are probably things that Mozilla does. You know, everyone uses a Mozilla product, whether it's Firefox, whether it's something else you guys have, for a particular reason. And I think potentially another skepticism someone might have is, oh, is this Mozilla shifting away from their priorities? I only want, and I respect Mozilla for their third-party web engine. I don't care about this AI stuff. And now they're going to be focusing on AI stuff. So should I start looking for another browser? Like I can see this be a pretty realistic chain of thoughts. So I was just curious, like, what are your guys' priorities going forward? And is that going to stay the same?
Yeah, I can tell you that AI, if you look at like the number of people working on this at Mozilla, is like this big relative to all the other non-AI things that the entire organization is working on. It's like maybe 5% of the company in some capacity spends some part of their day like working on something like this. Like our AI product management team is like 4 people, pretty small in like 1,000-person company. And so I think, you know, I think people are always going to push for the thing that they think is the most important thing to work on. But I would say the teams that are working on the Gecko rendering engine, web compatibility, ensuring that the Firefox works on the most websites on the planet, that it's performant, like that actually still makes up the lion's share of the people at the company. And I don't see that changing anytime soon because like we're nothing if the browser doesn't work. And the Gecko rendering engine, like we're like the last of the great rendering engines, you know? It's like Chromium, WebKit, and us. And like, we can't walk away from that. Like, that's what makes us independent. That's what makes us like have a voice and have a seat at the table. And so like that stuff's going to remain super, super important for us forever. So that's what I would say about that. Like people will always have their sort of like lead horse that they're really excited about. And they wish that everyone in the company was working on that one thing. Some people probably feel that way about Pocket. Like, could you just work on Pocket, all of you, all the time? And the reality is it doesn't work out that way. But I can assure people that like the majority of our energy and effort is being spent on building like a world-class browser that works for as many people as possible. And we think AI is a component of that, but it's not the only meal. It's not the only dish on the menu, so to speak. And that doesn't feel like it's changing here.
Yeah, and then I had Bobby Hawley on from your team as well, not too long ago, to talk about kind of the WebKit, or not the WebKit, the Gecko side of things and how it compares to WebKit and Chromium and stuff like this.
Yeah, so. Bobby is one of the guys I work with on a daily basis. He's brilliant.
Yeah, it's a good interview. So if you guys haven't listened to that was a good one too.
Cool.
My last question. Yeah. It's kind of on the note of the skeptics, but I think it could just be a good finishing point for us here. How would you recommend someone who's confused about all of this get started? They're like, okay, I hear this interview. I've had it, you know, maybe I've had my AI controls off for everything because I don't want to touch it. Yeah. Is there a specific feature, or maybe is it something away from Firefox entirely to kind of like dip their toes into the AI world if they want to at least see if it's for them?
Yeah. I mean, I would say there's a few things. Like one is like watching videos like this, hearing somebody like you talk about like, I'm skeptical, like convince me. Why should I use this? Like just getting over that hump and sort of educating yourself is like a good starting point, I think, for people. In terms of like specific features in the browser, you know, trying out Shake to summarize is kind of fun. It's going to be coming to Android, so that'll be a thing. So then it'll be available on as many platforms as possible. I mean, I think what we see most often for people who are turning it off is they turn it off and they leave translation on, or they leave alt text generation on. Then it's like, well, are you trying AI at that point, or is it kind of just working behind the scenes? It's probably more working behind the scenes, but at least you're getting some of the benefit of it. When it comes to like actually trying it out, I would say you might wait until Smart Window is live and know that Firefox and Mozilla are handling this in a way that is as aligned with your interests as any other, like better than any other company on the planet. And and then try, like, if you're more technical, try like a bring your own model kind of situation where maybe the model's on your device or whatever, or try one of the open source models or something like that. And like, just ask it some questions. I find that like a lot of times when I don't know what to do with AI or when I come into like a blank canvas, I'm kind of like, well, what can I do here? And it's like, oh, I have a bunch of ideas for things you can do. And it's like, oh, let me try one of those. And I just sort of do a little trial and error, and I kind of learn. That's how I've learned how to use Claude Code. That's how I've learned how to use all the AI that I use in my life. But like, you think of AI as like a plucky intern that's sort of like always willing to help, And like, that's the good construct for like, well, what kind of a task could I ask this thing to do for me? Or how could it help me? Like intern level task.
It's a good way to put it. Actually.
Expect it to get it wrong a little bit, but like generally it's going to kind of help you in your day to day, And so like, drafting things, summarizing things, like taking dense, convoluted information and making sense out of it, like especially where people miss nuances across like really complicated like chunks of information. It's actually really good at that stuff. Like because that's what machines are good at. Like they're better than us. And then I would say the other thing is like, don't lose the skepticism. Like AI is not a substitute for your own judgment or facts or accountability. Like even at Mozilla, we are really clear even about employees' usage of AI. Like it's not a substitute for your judgment. Like we expect you are in control of the things that you take out of AI. And obviously we have really strict policies on what can be used and stuff there, but like it's not a replacement for human judgment, and it's not a replacement for like accountability if you're using it. So be skeptical. Like if you are skeptical, stay skeptical. Like approach it with that lens, because I'm not going to tell people to be different than they are. It's how you're wired, And so like I think that's important for people to approach it with the lens that they bring. Or if they just don't want to, don't approach it at all. But I think you'll be missing out if you don't like dip your toe in the water, as you said. Yeah.
Got it. Do you have any place to send people to follow what you're working on, either on Mozilla's end or your personal end? For people.
Oh man, my personal end has very little to do with Mozilla work, but I would say definitely we're trying to release as much as we can on the Mozilla blog, and especially forward-looking roadmap type stuff. Like we are often teasing the things that are coming in future features. Mozilla Connect is also a great way to get involved. We have a community of people that are just like clamoring to get access to stuff before it's available for the public. Like we love that because it's often filled with some skeptics, and like we want to hear all of the things that they don't like about it and like what the problems are. Like that's actually the way that we build better products. So like that, I know you don't hang out on Reddit for obvious reasons, but like Reddit, we pay attention to that stuff. Like we really do. So any of the community touch points, socials, things like that, like those are the ways to kind of send us feedback. And we really do listen and pay attention to all of that stuff. We can't always act on it right away, but like it's a big part of the inputs into how we think about building products and like understanding what users of the browser want and don't want. So keep doing all those things would be my advice to people.
Very cool. Well, thank you for your time, Adam. I know we went a little over here, but
it's okay.
I really appreciated the talk, and I think we did a good job diving into all the nuances of these AI features, hopefully.
Yeah, I sure hope we did. And thanks, Henry, for having me on. This is like really fun. You're a great interviewer, so I love talking about this stuff. So I'll come back anytime.
Cool. Thanks, Adam.
All right.
And with all of that said, I just want to thank Adam for coming on the podcast, taking the time to be here, and helping explain a little bit of the philosophy behind AI, the pros and cons, and Mozilla's approach and where they think they are in the equation. If you have any more questions, definitely let me know. I probably will have them on for another interview down the road, especially regarding their new VPN product. So if you have any questions about their free VPN that is now inside of the Firefox browser, definitely let me know, and I'm going to try to follow up with them and get that interview going. Last thing, if you like like these podcasts and you want to support them and keep them growing, you can become a Techlorian in the description. This is a really easy way to get access to exclusive perks in our community, like our private Signal group. You also get access to some credits across both our website and our videos if you're into that kind of thing. And of course, you get to keep this podcast growing. That is all I have to say. I hope you learned something new today to keep yourself and the people around you safer. And I'll see you next time on Techlore Talks.